Story 1. My favorite is when they use the turn signal as they are turning. The mystery is already over, my friend. Story 2. Not me, but an officer who trained me when I started working my current job. She refused to use turn signals in the patrol unit and would submit negative daily reports on my performance if I used them. When I asked why it was such a big deal, she responded, "That would be one less advantage on our side." I found out from other training officers after her that this is not a normal practice and that she was the unusual one. Story 3. A friend complained that they disliked following me because I never used my turn signals. I said, "What do you mean? I use my turn signals every time I change lanes or turn. I even signal when I turn into a parking spot." They replied, "You have literally never used your turn signals once the entire time I have known you." My turn signals did not work for at least the 2 years they had known me. Story 4. I always signal, but I have noticed in dense cities that some drivers accelerate when they see you signaling to merge into their lane. It probably discourages some people from signaling, but I think the natural adaptation most do is to start merging as they signal. On the other hand, I have seen some drivers in Arizona and Colorado actually slow down to give you more room when you signal. Story 5. If you do not use your turn signal at all, or you only use your turn signal after you are on the brakes and moments before you are actually turning, that is very inconsiderate. Story 6. There is no reason to not use your signals. Period. Those who do not use them on purpose are inconsiderate. Signed, a biker who has lost too many friends to drivers who do not signal or who text while driving. Story 7. People who activate their turn signals when they are turning instead of before always annoy me. Story 8. I'm so used to people cutting in front of me without signaling that it doesn't faze me anymore. There's people who leave their turn signal on for miles without ever changing lanes that stress me out. Are you just oblivious to the fact that your turn signal is on, or are you oblivious to everything around you? Story 9. Living and driving in Los Angeles and New York, I got so used to not trusting even when people did use turn signals that I wait until people pass to go and do not count on them to do what I expect, whether turning lanes or not. Story 10. I also cannot understand those people. I think I am a little weird myself though. Sometimes when I am in my neighborhood, I check my mirror to confirm there is no car around just to not use my turn signal. I have no idea why I occasionally do that, but not using a turn signal feels like leaving the house without pants on. Story 11. My biggest pet peeve when driving is people who don't use their turn signals. They are not there for decoration. Story 12. I don't trust anyone around me and don't want them to know what I am planning. I just drive along nice and smooth, minding my own business, then lane change. Booyah! Then I park my BMW 230i diagonally across 3 disabled spots. It's not easy. It's a small car, but I'm up to the challenge. Story 13. They signed a Bohemian Motorworks waiver not knowing why the stick on the left hand exists. Pushing up and down with the left hand does not make sense. Their wallets, however, are located on the right side of their bodies. Pumping cash into a lease is not beyond their limitations. Story 14. They are either too lazy and worthless to care or too incompetent to learn proper technique and think that this compensates, though in reality it will cause them delays as drivers hesitate unnecessarily due to their intentionally untelegraphed intentions. Story 15. He is too busy with his boyfriend in the passenger seat. He did not really mean to turn or change lanes. Story 16. Florida here. I think the sun fries their brains. We have a lot of tourists who have no clue where they are going. Even our police officers do not use them. Story 17. I had a friend whose reasoning was that she did not want anyone to follow her. It has been a couple of years now, and I still scratch my head thinking about it. Story 18. By the way, this applies even when no one is behind you. I cannot tell you how many times I have been waiting to pull out of an intersection, and the person on the road I am trying to turn onto does not use their signal and turns into where I am coming from. I could have gone a long time ago. Story 19. I use turn signals all the time. I have not been on a racetrack in a while, so of course the first time I am on the track after 18 years, I use the turn signals before every turn. It was embarrassing after some of the track marshals and drivers made fun of me. Story 20. I moved to Maryland not too long ago and quickly learned from the subreddit that the law requiring signals for a lane change had been ruled unenforceable by precedent. Drivers very rarely use signals. It is always a guessing game. They also have a problem letting you merge onto the highway at the proper speed if they are exiting at the next exit, as if they need to be in front of you even though they are about to decelerate significantly. However, you would not know that because they do not use signals. They have issues. Story 21. Here in Las Vegas, when you use your turn signal, people speed up and actively block you. They speed up and slow down so you cannot get over. Driving here is horrible. I am sure this is not the only place where that happens. Story 22. All I will say is that I had a not-at-fault 0% accident where the other driver abruptly cut in. The fact that the other party did not use a turn signal was a contributing factor. Story 23. Sometimes I start signaling, and when I begin turning the steering wheel, the car cancels the signal. My hands are occupied, making it difficult to signal again. Story 24. Probably because they need one hand to turn the steering wheel and they have something in their other hand. 90% of the time it is their phone, but it might be a drink, makeup, or something else. Story 25. One excuse might be that they bought a car designed for driving on the opposite side of the road. The manufacturer decided to save a few pennies by not swapping the indicator stem to the outside of the steering wheel. Drivers of German cars in New Zealand seem to struggle, but perhaps that is a bad example. Story 26. I do almost every lane change. Part of that is me, but I think it is less unusual in my particular mid-sized town. Story 27. Listen, they forgot to install them in those specific Tesla, BMW, and Mercedes vehicles. It is not their fault. Story 28. I sincerely apologize, but I broke mine about a year ago, and it costs around $300 to repair it. I plan to fix it because I want to keep the car, but it is low on my priority list. I will do arm signals now that the weather is nice. Story 29. Most of the time when I try to move over, people speed up to block me. Houston drivers are frustrating. Story 30. Because most people see it and immediately say, "Not today," and speed up to seal you out. People generally behave poorly. Story 31. If I am changing lanes close enough to you to need a turn signal, it is because you are going too slow in the passing lane and need to get out of the way. Story 32. I'm from Maryland, where it is completely legal to switch lanes without using a turn signal. Because of this, we often forget to use them. At least that's what I assume is happening here. Story 33. They forgot. They do not know their signal lights are not working. They assume others know where they want to go, so they do not bother. They drive competitively and deliberately want to confuse others. Story 34. I ride motorcycles. If nobody is around and I know I am safe, using the turn signal on most motorcycles is a nuisance. Story 35. My ex had a hard enough time just driving the car that she could not deal with the added distraction of taking one hand off the steering wheel to activate the turn signal. I knew other people with this problem too. Scary. Story 36. I use them, but people who do not are very likely BMW drivers. I am pretty sure their cars do not come with turn signals. Story 37. I used to make a judgment call based on whether any cars were affected by me. Now I use them all the time based on a simple story. A man told me he was pulled over in a Corvette for speeding. He explained to the officer that he was trying to get out of the way of a car tailgating him. So he put on his turn signal, changed lanes, and sped up. For whatever reason, the officer focused on that. "Yes, I saw you put on your turn signal," he said, and let him go. My take is that the driver pointed out something to show that he was mindful about safety. I take that story wherever I go with little volunteer efforts, so I always have something good to show that I contributed. Story 38. I wish my mother was still around because I ask her this regularly. I use the turn signal to exit my driveway just out of habit. Story 39. There is a special place in hell for people who do not signal when making a right turn into the street I am trying to turn left out of as I patiently wait for both sides to be clear to turn safely. Story 40. I only do not use them when driving and merging aggressively. I do not want to signal my actions beforehand. Story 41. I use turn signals every time I drive because I dislike when people do not use them. However, when I had a bright-colored Porsche, I stopped using turn signals to change lanes. When I drove that car, people would speed up or slow down to block me from changing lanes when I used turn signals. I even experimented by turning on my signal without intending to change lanes. 4 to 5 car length gaps turned into tailgating instantly. So I stopped using turn signals, otherwise I could not change lanes. I had to check very carefully, then get far enough ahead so I could not be blocked as quickly. Then I might turn on the signal for a second if I cared or remembered. It is surprising how people reacted to that car. I cannot think of any reason other than jealousy for why they would go out of their way to make my journey more difficult than necessary. I always use turn signals at intersections, though. Not using them there is simply bad behavior. Story 42. I had a friend who did not use turn signals. I asked him why. He said he did not want other people to know where he was going. I asked if that was not unsafe. He either did not answer or gave an unconvincing answer. Story 43. I only indicate when necessary. That is, I will not indicate without a witness. If my indicator helps you start moving in trust, I will not collide with you. I will use it. Story 44. Where I live, it is usually rural residents in large trucks. My theory is that they are so unintelligent they do not know their left from their right. Additionally, they all look alike. Story 45. It is just laziness and not caring about other people. I use my turn signals most of the time, and the only time that I occasionally do not is when no one is close to me whatsoever. I think it is a symptom of a much larger problem in our society. It is a mix of entitlement along with laziness, but it is mostly about a lack of empathy. Story 46. There is only one answer. They are people who cannot grasp the concept that it is a good idea to let other drivers know your intentions. Story 47. I use my turn signal most of the time, but when I'm leaving my neighborhood, there's a big bush blocking my point of view to see if there's incoming traffic to turn right. We can turn left or right at the light. I don't turn on my blinker because I get anxious that cars behind me will get mad that I didn't turn earlier when I could have. However, I cannot see the cars coming or not coming because my car is small and has a long front that collides with the bush. Story 48. I used to not use them until my early 20s if no one was behind me because there was no point. That was my reasoning. One night I was out drinking and cruising back roadside like we did back then. I was with an older buddy and he called me on it. He suggested that if I did not make it a habit one time, I was going to forget, and there would be a police officer behind me. That made sense. Story 49. From what I can see on the road. 1. No one ever taught them to use turn signals for lane changes, turning, and other maneuvers. They are swerving through traffic, so signaling would be pointless. They are on their phone and do not bother to signal. Story 50. You are concerned about the welfare of others or not concerned about others. You use the turn signal accordingly, along with 1,000 other driving manners. It's just the person driving. Story 51. People who do not use turn signals are extremely self-absorbed and care very little about the thoughts and opinions of others. They feel they own the road and are above communicating their intentions to others. Story 52. I used to be the best turn signaler you ever saw, but then I moved to Virginia and dated a girl who told me you did not have to signal if you lived in Virginia. In disbelief, I searched to confirm, and sure enough, the information said she was right, so I stopped signaling for about 2 years. Turns out she and the information were both completely wrong, so I had to switch back, and now I am all messed up. I am a recovering no-turn signal user. Please forgive me. Story 53. It is not my responsibility to tell you which way I am going. You better get out of my way. Understand? Story 54. Because as soon as I turn it on, the driver in the lane I'm trying to get into is going to speed up to block my merge. Story 55. The left turn signal is broken. I have had several different mechanics examine it multiple times over the years. Can be working when I leave the garage and be broken again within a week. It is okay though because I get around by simply never making left turns. Story 56. Ask the driver who turned in front of me and completely ruined my car. I am sure the judge will ask at their trial. Story 57. We are all going to die in the end, so nothing really matters anyway, except for saving your blinkers from exhaustion. That does matter. Story 58. I always try to use my turn signals. That being said, most of the time when I signal, the car will speed up to try to block me from merging. So, I kind of understand why some people do not. Story 59. I will have to answer for those individuals as they cannot read. We are self-absorbed fools and do not care what harm we cause with our reckless maneuvers. Story 60. I am building trust. I believe in the power of human intuition. If the car starts drifting toward a lane, that is the universe speaking. Do not fight it. Story 61. The only time I do not signal is if you sit in the left lane doing 70 miles per hour and the flow of traffic is doing 85 miles per hour, and you do not move over because you never check your mirrors. I will overtake and not signal back in when I cut it very close to you out of frustration. Story 62. I think people who do not indicate are just overwhelmed with all the other aspects of driving. It is too much for them to consider. Story 63. They imagine everyone around them are mind readers who fully understand the intentions of an unknown person in a 4,000-pound metal weapon. Story 64. It is hard to hold the steering wheel while scrolling Instagram and use your turn signal. So, you omit the least important one. Story 65. I usually use my turn signals, even in parking lots, but sometimes I just forget. If I am tired driving home from an overnight shift, I might forget to use my turn signals if cars are not already close. I am not trying to be selfish or ignorant. I just realize after merging that I forgot my turn signal. Story 66. It all started when I was a child walking with my parents after the movies. We went down an alley, and a burglar appeared. My father fought the man until he was shot and killed. My mother protected me from the gunman, but in the end, she was killed as well. Story 67. I drive a bus, so when I signal, it is not a request. It is a warning, as in move, get out of the way. My car, however, has a short somewhere in the wiring, so I have to push the stalk and press the right spot on the dashboard to signal. I am usually successful, but failing to signal is not for lack of effort. Story 68. I live in a very rural area. Most of the time, there is no one around to signal to. Obviously, I signal when there is someone, but otherwise, why bother? Story 69. I drive a BMW and typically use the headlights. However, I tend to get lazy and not use them at night or on a quiet street. Story 70. I do not use it when changing lanes because, for some reason, drivers get possessive over their lane and will speed up to block me. My children thought I was crazy, but then they got their licenses and confirmed this. Story 71. Do not hate or downvote me for this, but I never use them. I do not drive and do not have a car. Story 72. When driving around Puerto Rico, you quickly realize no one uses their turn signals. When coming back from vacation, it took me a day to get back into using my turn signals. You also realize how many people do not use them here as well. Story 73. There are medians almost everywhere where I live, so everyone already knows where I am going if I am getting into a right turn lane. Story 74. If I'm in closer, more packed traffic, I'll use them. But for the most part, my driving is before 6 a.m., so the streets are empty. Story 75. So you do not know my next move. When I drive, I pretend I am a giant anthropomorphic cockroach. My driving reflects my exoskeleton persona. You need to drive fast and with purpose. There is no time for people to know your plan and catch you unprepared. And no, it is not a fetish. Story 76. I signal if there is anyone around who might find this information useful. If there is not, I do not. Ironically, the only traffic ticket I have received in 35 years of driving was for not signaling when there was not another vehicle on the road. Story 77. Okay, not gonna lie, I don't use turn signals if no cars are affected by that choice. If there is a car waiting to take a left turn that could go if I use a turn signal, then I will. Story 78. It is such an ingrained habit that I use them all the time. I am constantly signaling with my blinker in my golf cart at work. It has no lights and no stalk. I am just always gesturing with my arm to remember to signal. Story 79. In certain cities and parts of the country, I do not use my turn signals because some drivers speed up to block me when I do. In areas where people are courteous, I use my signals. Story 80. Most people see cars as going from point A to point B. You are probably someone who enjoys driving, maybe even cool cars. Most people do not care, which is why they do not know that you are supposed to enter the exit ramp before slowing down or use the turn signal before your wheels are already turned. Not that I care, it is easy to predict what these inexperienced drivers will do if you have driven enough hours. Story 81. I use them almost all the time, but I admit that when I am alone, I do not turn them on because I am mischievous. Story 82. I don't mind driving on country roads if it does not affect anyone. For example, when there are no cars around or only one car behind me. I have had cars pass me on the left when turning right and block my view of the road too many times. In the city, I always do so, or if the signal serves a purpose. Story 83. Most times I do, but sometimes when I am in a turn lane, I might be a little negligent because what do you think I am going to do in a turn lane? Turn. Story 84. Many people use turn signals unnecessarily. Turn signals are used to signal your intent. If you are changing lanes, use the turn signal. If you are driving a European car, use the lane change signal, which is a short signal that turns off after 3 to 5 blinks. If you are in a designated turning lane, do not use the turn signal because your intent is clear. There is no other choice but to turn. Only use the turn signal if you wish to change lanes or make a U-turn. For example, if you are in a left turn lane, signal right if you want to leave that lane. Signal left if you intend to make a U-turn. If you are going to follow the lane and turn left, do not signal. If you are in a lane with two options, such as going straight or turning right, always signal your intent if you are turning. If you see a road sign that says, right of way for those turning left or right, always signal your intent. Use the turn signal at least 100 meters before your turn, but only after the last possible turn in that direction. Some people wait at an intersection without signaling and then turn on the blinker as they turn. Everyone can see that you are turning, you are no longer signaling intent. If you are exiting a roundabout, use the lane change signal just before your exit. If you only have a turn signal, remember to turn it off immediately after you exit. Use the turn signal when you are parked at the curb and about to drive off. Turn it off immediately once you are on the road. Contrary to popular belief, turn signals are not there to show that you are turning. They are to show your intent when there is more than one choice. Story 85. I use turn signals, but I notice that the moment you turn them on, people in adjacent lanes will accelerate to pass you, sometimes dangerously, or just refuse to give you space to merge. This made me question if this is why some people no longer use turn signals. Story 86. Because people will turn in front of you at the last second, I have to slam on the brakes to avoid hitting them. It is just a courtesy. You do not need to know if I am turning or not. Story 87. I drive a Bayerische Motorenwerke vehicle and do not use the turn signal because the dealer charges me $150 to replace the bulb when it burns out. Therefore, I avoid wearing out the bulbs. Story 88. Because the person behind me is being rude, I like to give them a heart attack when my brake lights suddenly come on for a turn. Story 89. When I try to change lanes and signal, some driver in the lane I want to enter speeds up to block me, so I stop signaling. Story 90. In one city in the country where I live, turn signals are used only to celebrate a successful lane change. If you turn on your signal there, even a car far behind in the next lane will suddenly speed up. I don't use turn signals in that city. It actually feels more dangerous to use them. Story 91. If I am overtaking, I sometimes omit the signal on the way back into the right lane. I also do not leave my indicator on in turn lanes. In both situations, it is fairly superfluous because other drivers know what I am doing. Story 92. Keeps people alert. Using them will allow people to let their guard down, which can cause crashes. Edit. I thought people would understand this is a joke. I am careful enough as a driver that I have decided not to drive. I am allowed to with my condition, but I am not willing to risk anyone else's life. I always use indicators even when there is nobody around. Story 93. It is not my responsibility to tell you what I am doing. Has nobody been taught defensive driving before? Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.